that they're preparing to live stream the meeting, but I wasn't able to choose my Azure profile, so we'll see how this goes. Okay, I can see a live stream on YouTube now, but I'll figure out the recording after. And I see a little banner that says from Zoom that the meeting is being live streamed. Okay, let's get started. I'll start sharing my screen. Okay. Um, can everyone see the agenda?
Yes.
Um, we will definitely do a little bit of triaging today, so we'll make sure to reserve time, maybe 20 minutes at the end, but we'll do a quick run through our PRs. Yeah, feel free to add to the agenda meanwhile. So list of pull requests. 1246 for the cosine design doc. Akash, is that something you want to bring up on the agenda today related to the design doc?
Yeah, there was one that we talked about on Monday. If we could just at least begin the introduction of this issue, and then folks can take a closer look on the design doc.
Sure. I also briefly sunk with E offline just to send him some links about like the ACR scope map feature. But I'll navigate to the section. Remind me, which file is it in? I think it's in
It's in
the
discussion, under discussion.
this one.
Yeah.
Yep. Bring out the preview. I remember there's like a section on the notation behavior, but that'll hit on annotation. Okay, great. How about wildcard? Is that the scoping?
No, you'll have to go past the section.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yep. Do we want to talk about it now, or
Oh yeah, sure. We have E on the call. Do we? Just double checking. I
yeah, I think
said
he's
hello
here.
to him before. Okay.
Yeah. So I know we talked about this with a few of us on Monday, but for Yi, I can give like a brief overview. So with the new trust policy that we're introducing for cosine, we're going to support the scopes field, which will allow you to decide like at the registry or the repository or even the tag or digest level, which image references you want that particular trust policy to apply to. So this is kind of new behavior in terms of the way notation does it is slightly different. I believe notation supports the wildcard support as well as it supports if you provide like an absolute URL to the repository. But there doesn't seem to be like registry wide scope, or if you had a wildcard registry domain, that support is not currently there. So we need to think about how we would implement it specifically for this scenario. So first thing to consider is what are the actual scenarios you want to support? These four are some of the ones that I thought of. Um, and depending on which ones we want to prioritize, it can change like how we want to implement it. So I think for sure we want to do wildcard, which is number one. I think we want to do like a registry wide scope as well. When I spoke to you Yi, last time, I think you mentioned that would be helpful. And then maybe a wildcard registry domain scope where you can say for some registries will have unique domains per registry that you create. So ACR is one of those, ECR is another one of those. So you'd want to actually specify some sort of wildcard character that is followed by a series of, static characters that are in the domain. And then the fourth one is kind of where I'm not sure if we're going to support this or if it's important to support this. It's the concept of intermediate repository paths. So instead of absolute repository paths, which notation supports, where if your image is defined, then you can only scope all the way down to the exact repository level. There's no concept of, if I had day slabs ratify, I could instead just do day slabs star, and it should encompass all the repositories nested underneath that. I don't know if that's a scenario we need to support. If that is a scenario that we need to support, then it gets a little bit more involved in how do we actually match your trust policy that you want to use to the actual scopes that are defined. Because certain scopes can actually overlap with other scopes, right? You might have one generic scope that encompasses, actually, Susan, if you could just scroll down, I have an example of this. Um,
Is it this one?
no, actually, you scroll back up. I think we missed it. Um,
No?
uh, no, let's see, where is it? Anyway, I guess maybe I didn't push that change yet, but basically, one example would be if you had, let's say you had ghcr.io/dayslabs, and then your actual image reference was ghcr.io/dayslabs/ratify, and the tag was v1.1.0. In one trust policy, you put the entire bat tag level scope as a scope entry. You might have another trust policy that doesn't go at the tag level, but stops at the absolute repository level. And then, trust policy C would have at the ghcr.io/day slabs level. So only at that level. So you have one image reference that if you apply the scopes to, they actually could match to multiple different trust policies. But I think what you'd want is you'd want it to match to the tightest scope possible. So you'd want it to match likely to the most specific scope that would apply to it. Now, defining this most specific scope is a little bit challenging to do because um, if you start from the domain and then move all the way down and traverse the path and say the longer the path, that is the most specific, that's one definition of it. Another definition is if you're trying to match, if you use like a wildcard repository, then you want to see what is the match that's closest to the right of the reference, right? Because further down is something more specific in the subdirectory level. So um, it's a little bit complicated on how to actually determine what is tighter scoped than another. And then from a user point of view, actually configuring this, there's obviously regular expression syntax you could use, but those have two big downfalls. One is that regular expression is not as straightforward to use, and I'm not sure if it's a reasonable assumption that users would know exactly how to do it. And even if they did, it's very kind of error prone. You would need some good indication of, oh, why didn't the regular expression actually work when I thought it would? The other concern is that if you have this concept of tightly scoped versus loosely scoped and you're providing like a regular expression, it's actually very difficult to determine, does one regular expression encompass another regular expression? So yeah, those are the concerns. I think the solution that I propose is that we use basically like a string matching solution. It's not a perfect solution, but it is what I think would work. So you would provide some sort of um, string match. So if you want to match on a wildcard registry domain, like in the fourth bullet point. So if you want to do .azurecr.io, you would simply just specify that, and then we would do a substring match on that and see if there's a string that matches in there. Another one is if you want to specify like all the way down to a specific repository path, you could do that, and it would be the same. And if there are multiple policies that have substring matches, we would just default to the longest substring match. So if you define a longer match string, maybe that is considered the tightest scope. Um, that doesn't cover all the scenarios, though. There are scenarios where you might have a match that is longer than another, but if you actually look at it, it's more generic. For example, if you're scoping down to a particular registry name, that might have a shorter match than if you had specified a long path name, but that path name is not constrained to actually what registry you're associated with. So I know that's a lot of edge cases, and I think if you read through this section, things will make a lot more sense. But these are the different areas that I'm exploring right now. So I'll stop there for now. I'm sure people have questions, so happy to answer any.
Um, yeah, thanks, Akash. I think from the user point of view, so we have the wildcard, right? So any images or any type of any artifacts from any source will use this policy, right? And we also would like to have policies on registry level. So different registry or a group of registry can have certain policy, right? Then it is I think it is related to the absolute parse or relative parse. So maybe we can simplify it as on the registry before the absolute parse of the repository, we can have I mean, the URL can contain namespace, right? I saw this kind of format, registry namespace, then repository. So maybe we can just simply call it on the namespace level. So user may have several repository under namespace on the one registry. So user would like to apply the policy for a namespace so that any repository or subpath under this namespace will be applied with this policy. Then go down, it will be the absolute path of the repository, right? Similar to the Notary project, a list of a repository that the user want to apply the policy. I think there is one more. The lowest granularity is a list of images. So currently we did not see the customer want to specify a policy for a group or list of specific images, but we did see some customer want to exclude some images. But this is I think from granularity point of view, the image level is the lowest level, right? So I think these are the different cases from user point of view. User can be provided with this flexibility and the granularity for configure the policy. From the priority point of view, I mean, currently what the user asked is the for example, the wildcard case. So any registry, they want to apply the same policy. And then it is on the registry level. So the policy will be applied to a certain registry or a group of registries. I think these two will be the first priority. And I think this is also what is missing in notary project trust policy, because it is not easy that user want to specify all the repository under a certain registry. So user has to list the repository URL in notary project trust policy. They cannot do it for entire registry. So I think the wildcard and also the registry level are the two scope that we can prioritize first.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. In terms of configuration, do you feel like regular expression, I think based off of the limited use cases we want to support, I think that's going to be too much of a requirement on the user to specify, right? We want to provide something simpler, some path-based
Yeah.
with maybe the star wildcard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe wildcard. Yeah. So if I'm a user, I'm on the lowest level. I just specify the list of image reference, right? Either with tag or digest. Then on the repository level, it is similar as the notary project. Then on the namespace level, I would like to use the wildcard. So I specify the path, then I use the wildcard so that every other subpath under this namespace will use this policy. And similar on the registry level, either the specific name for the registry, or I can use the wildcard as you show the example for the ACR. I think that is common. So user may have multiple ACRs, so they just need to specify the wildcard in the URI, right? The address.
Got
So
it.
your
That
proposal
makes sense.
is because it is long, so I did not I'm not very clear about your proposal. So the regex is not supported. I agree. It could be too complex, and also the result is not that iterative, right? So it could be a different result. I agree with that. But for the other part, did you plan to use wildcard or not?
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. So you would use the wildcard character. Standalone, you'd use it and it would refer to the all-encompassing scenario that you mentioned. And then if the user wanted to define wildcard characters, let's say for a registry domain or for the namespace level, I think they could follow it up with like a /star, or they would do star.azurecr.io or .ecr.io or
Okay.
whatever. That would kind
Okay.
of be the target experience. So one clarifying question, do you feel like we needed to support mixed scenarios where they may not have, they want to specify a wildcard registry domain along with a potential repository and namespace path that comes after that? Or is it assumed that if they're specifying at the namespace level, then for sure they've selected a specific registry domain followed by the namespace path and then the wildcard?
I think this is a good question. You mean there could be different policies, but the
Yeah,
scope is overlapping, right?
that's the reason I'm asking these is because the overlap is the biggest issue to rectify. Because you could have which one do you select if you have multiple overlapping scopes in multiple policies that could match? You can only select one trust policy.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
I
think
want
there are
to.
different. Susan, please.
So I want to ask about the multiple policy scenario a bit more. So the customer configures one cosine verifier, and one cosine verifier, how many trust policies can you configure?
Yeah, so a sample scenario with multiple trust policies would be, let's say I'm a user, I have multiple keys that I use in my organization. And the top level, and each group has their own set of keys, and they manage use the same registry and in their namespace separated, right? So there's some images that are beyond namespace, right? Higher level than namespace, and those would be signed by a different set of keys versus each team level within their namespace, they would have different level of keys. And so you may have one trust policy that'll say, okay, at the registry domain level, I want to use this set of keys. And that's the most, expansive permissible. And then for individual teams, you may have multiple trust policies under there for each namespace saying, actually, this should kind of override, this is more specific to this. And for these specific, repositories in this namespace, I want you to consider this key set instead, right? So this is just
So you
one
can,
example. Yeah.
one verifier, you can specify multiple
Yeah.
trust policies.
Yeah. And it may not be like the team separation may not be actually what's used. It might be other scenarios too where they do namespace separation for whatever. Let's say environment like prod versus dev versus testing. So
And it's up to Ratify to select the most appropriate policy to pass to the cosine library to do the validation.
yes, yeah.
Is what the winning part means. Got
Yes.
it, got it.
Shui has a comment in the chat. I think there are two directions. One is that we do not allow overlapping, right? Another is that we should define a rule how you can overlap. For example, if you define the lowest, then it will override the very general one. Actually, I think in Notary project trust policy, the wildcard is a kind of global.
Yep.
And also there are other scope, right? I mean, the repository, absolute path of the repository, this kind of scope. So it is kind of overlapping or override the global scope. So if you did not define any policy for your specific repositories, then it will go to find the policy in the global one. So, but for besides the global one, you cannot overlap, as Shui mentioned. If you define the global wildcard and you have a reported one, and then you specify another trust policy for reported one, it is not allowed. So maybe we can follow the same logic. So for if you specify the wildcard, it will be a global one. So if any policy you want to specify that does not follow into any policy you defined, then it will Ratify will search in the wildcard, the global one. Otherwise, for the policy you want to define, they should not overlap with each other. So there are two directions, whether we allow or we just allow it for the global one.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I did notice that Notary was only doing absolute paths, which made things a little bit more simpler. It's just the global versus absolute path scenario. So there isn't a concept of namespace versus, path-based things. Shui, go for it.
Yeah, so it's different. So the star, a single star means the global one, so it's a different class of scope. So we can just so it's different. For other scopes, they are just normal scopes, and for those scopes, they should not overlap. If they overlap, it will have the problem you have stated that you don't know which one is the correct one, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So and also it's hard to give a policy, and the user may just misconfigure the stuffs, and maybe, for example, he or she think, okay, this code should follow this pattern, but Spotify thinks it follows another pattern, and in the end, you will see image is verified against a wrong trust source. That's not secure.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's a very good point. So yeah, I think so. Then what we could do is just disallow if you find any overlaps. If we find any overlaps when we kind of do an initial check, we could just inform the user that this is an invalid policy. You need to maybe update it.
Yeah.
Or actually, we couldn't even. Yeah, that's probably what we'd have to do, right? We would say we couldn't perform the verification because we don't know which trust policy to apply at this point. We wouldn't be able to do it at trust policy definition time because we don't know if the scopes overlap just yet.
But we should do that in the trust policy. I mean, loading the trust policy part.
In the CR creation, in our
Yes,
case.
that's right.
Okay.
So if there is the issue, I'm applying a CR, so I can see the status, right? It's for example error.
Yes.
I
Yes.
remember we
Yeah.
have a similar scenario that yeah, for other scenarios, right? The CR is not correct.
Yes, we've just added the status property to the verifiers at the store. I think in the current release, or I'm not sure if it's released yet. It's been a while. But yes, that code has been merged.
But user need to explicitly get the status, right? So when you apply a CR, the output will not show you that it is okay, right? So at least you follow the general rule for the CR, then it will show you applied, right? But you need to additionally use the get status command to know whether it's okay, right? So this could be
That's correct. Yeah.
should be document that the user need to check the status.
Yes, we have sample describe commands in the CRD references. And because it's an asynchronous operation and there's the Kubernetes control plane go through multiple retry attempt. So when you apply, it'll just be like, okay, that the control plane is working on reconciling this change. But I believe it's common practice to inspect the logs and also review the status of the CR that's created.
And I feel when we do the actual verification, we can also probably return the error. So in case the user like ignore this status, because we can assume every user will follow the same pattern to like check the status after applying RCA.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep. But Binbin, if we had like a verifier map, and if on error, do we even have a verifier configured?
I think it will. I think it depends on how we set up the controller, because we add verifier and policies to a map in the controller. So if we throw the exception or return the error before adding to the map, then it will be.
Yeah, it won't be a configured verifier. But yes, we will review the customer experience on validation.
So I think just to close on this, we're deciding that we are not going to allow any sort of overlap except for the global wildcard scenario.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And it's also consistent
Yeah,
would
no,
be
that
bettering.
this makes sense. It constrains the problem by a lot. Now we don't have to consider a lot of this other stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, as Susan mentioned, it is also aligned with Notary project. So from Ratify user point of view, it's the unified experience.
Yep.
Right? So they do not need to switch to different contexts for config Notary projects. They should follow this, but for cosign, they should follow another one. So it's a unified experience. It is just at this moment, Notary project does not support the wildcard for the registry level or namespace level.
Yeah. And if the customer really want to have different level of rules, they can configure multiple cosign verifiers with different scopes. And then in that case, they will get multiple reports and they can decide which one they want to use.
Okay, so that means okay, so ideally we should only have one verifier, right? Then we configure this policy for that verifier. Susan, do you mean that for each policy there will be a verifier?
What I mean is we don't stop the customer from configuring multiple. Do we support that today, Akash and Binbin? You can create different CRs that points to the cosign verification library. There will be different instances of CR and we will pass on the report.
Yes, I guess we support it because we don't disallow that, so it should be supported.
So yeah, so if you that scenario I was talking about where you wanted to support different namespace level to override, you would need multiple verifiers for that then. You
Yep.
couldn't do that with one cosign verifier. So yeah, I just want you to be aware that would be the scenario where you would need multiple verifiers.
So it's related to the namespace multi-tenants.
So yeah, okay. So yeah, it could be maybe multi-tenancy will solve that issue anyway. But
Yep.
any scenario where you want to override a more generic scope with a more detailed scope will not be possible if we block on any overlapping scope in the same verifier. So one of those scenarios is if your namespace scope is different from the namespace trust policy is different from your global trust policy. But another one might be like, let's say I want for AzureCR.io, so ACR registries, I have one trust policy, but for Wabbit networks.azurecr.io, I have one specific policy for that registry. That in order to do that, you would need multiple verifiers because there's an overlap in the scope between the trust policies.
Okay. So I think this is more advanced. So in general, user have one verifier, right? Then configure the policy for the verifier. But for advanced use case, if you really want to do some overlapping or different verifiers, even the same type, you want to have a different policy, then you should use policy for different verifier instance. Then for the regular policy, you also need to do something, right? To evaluate the report, right? Based on the different verifier. I think that is more advanced and it's a bit complex. But anyway, it's doable and yeah.
Yep.
We can start with the very basic scenario first, then later over time for other scenarios, if user has a similar ask, we can think about it. But at least for now, today, our framework is about that. Yeah.
Just so we leave some time for triage later, I'm just going to quickly go through the remaining PRs. 1333, Akash, that one is ready for review?
Yes. So whenever you have a chance.
Yeah. I'll be able to take a look. I'm out of office tomorrow, so I'll try to take a look today. 1343, that one, the change looks pretty straightforward. So I've already approved it. I'm not sure. Are there any pending comments on that one?
I saw that you left one comment about the SBOM
Yeah.
release. So actually that already exists. That's
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So we just missed vulnerability report for some reason.
Yeah, it just never got added. Yeah.
Okay, got it, got
So
it.
yeah, I realized it and I thought, oh, I might as well just put it in this PR. So
Okay,
yeah.
sounds good. We'll be able to merge that one then.
Yeah, it's ready for merging. I don't know if anyone else wanted to take a look. Otherwise, we can just proceed.
Yeah. We'll give people maybe by end of today, and we can merge that.
Sounds good.
The roadmap documentation, I think E is working on that, addressing the comments from Luis and Sajay.
Yeah, I think I addressed the comments for Sajay. I provided some reference, and actually those references are what I used for creating this roadmap. So different community had different format, and even for some popular community, they do not have a very clear roadmap document. So I read a lot of reference implementation for the roadmap document. So then I came out with this proposal. I think what is left is the Akash's comment to mention the Pluggo framework, which could be a differentiator from Ratify project point of view, comparing with other policy engine. I would not say policy engine because they have much bigger scope. At least for now, we need to at the admission control, we need to work with gatekeeper, right? So yeah, I will, especially for the first paragraph, I will do some updates according to Akash's comment to make the pluggable framework and support different verifiers to make this more visible for the user to understand the values. And one more thing, Louis didn't join today. He mentioned the release cadence. So originally I put as, for example, 2 or 3 months we will have a release. Louis think maybe it is 3 or 4 months we have a release. Actually, I'm okay with that. Especially we can consider 3 months for a release. But currently the problem is that I would like to ratify in the time frame June to uplift to the support for the timestamping, because at that time, from notary project point of view, the timestamping support could be available. So I would like to at sometime in June so that we can have a release to accommodate the updates in notary project. So that means in April we plan a release, right? Then after 2 months in June we will have another release. I think after that we can consider a 3 months cadency. But anyway, this is just the plan. This is just the plan, so we can adjust it accordingly over time to see if anything we want to prioritize. But I think overall, from long-term point of view, we will target 3 months for one release.
Got it. And so yeah, 1344 is work in progress, and yeah, thanks for the pending action items. So 1353, it is picked up it is a duplicate of 1290, but I think I will close 1920 because the versions for some of the GitHub Actions out of date. So I'll be closing that one. And I've reopened 1353. This is to do only a subset of testing on the initial PR and then run full validation before merging to main. And I've documented the steps that needs to happen before we merge this PR. So Akash, I'm thinking that if you could review the workflow changes, and then if everything looks good next week, we can think about how to enable that and probably set up the branch protections and what else, like we have to configure the default branch protection and the tokens as well.
Sure, sounds good. I started taking a look at it. I have a few questions, but I think we could take it offline. I know you wanted to do the triage as well, so.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I can schedule an offline meeting for that as well. The other thing I wanted to do a part of the triage is the discussion that we reviewed this morning, Akash, from Kara about the error messages. So I just looked at, is that the discussion? No, sorry, wrong discussion, Ratify discussion. We noticed there's some discussions around the error messages from Kara's team. And I think there's one that we missed about the how to handle the expiry and rotation scenarios. But I think I will be able to respond to this thread here, 1327. But I think I confirmed the behavior last time. Once a certificate gets rotated or expired, and if the customer configured Ratify with the updated certificates, which means older images signed with previous certificate would fail validation. I think that's what the behavior Zach is trying to confirm.
I think it could be different for Notary project and cosign. For Notary projects, yeah, if certificates expired, so the image that signed before the certificate expiry should be able to validate, but this requires Notary project to support timestamping. Before that, Notary project support timestamping, the current behavior, it will fail the validation. But ideally, user would like to have these images signed before certificate expiry should be able to
still
pass
valid
the verification.
Yeah. I do think that's what they desire.
Yeah. And for the rotate, that means before expiry, for example, user rotate the certificate in AKB. I think this is a normal thing because user can have some policy. So actually, rotate will create a new version of certificate. So so in that case, normally, for example, the subject name of the certificate will not change. It will just be a new version of signed certificate that the CA issued, but other information could be the same. So in that case, even the root CA certificate, it will not change. So from verification point of view, if you remember that Notary project, we only require root CA certificate to be added in the store. And from the trust policy point of view, the trust identity is also the same. So that means if user rotate the certificate, the verification should also pass with the image signed by the new certificate.
Yeah,
Of
the
course,
customer did not
yeah.
say if they're using a leaf route or a self-signed. So given there's a lot of there's timestamping support that's coming out, would you mind responding to this thread
Yeah, I can do
to
that.
provide more information?
Yeah, I just didn't realize this discussion.
Yeah,
This space, there are issues. I only focus on the issues tab. So I was
exactly.
not aware that in the discussion there are some discussions ongoing.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll let them know that we'll do a better job on triaging the discussion items as well. And if we don't respond, maybe the best way to they can tag us on Slack or they can join the community meeting. But yes, as a future improvement, we'll make sure to kind of just have a quick look at what's under the discussions.
Yeah. Yeah, I will respond to this discussion, and I already have some content in certain document for
Yeah.
notary project and the cosign. And I also have one issue related to this. It means that especially for cosign, we should be able to fetch the latest version of the certificate or the key, because there is a chance that the new version of certificate and the key have a different metadata. So that means we need to refresh it. But anyway, we have that issue tracked. I will also mention in this discussion.
Yeah, that's great. And it's good to clarify what the customer scenario they have in mind, because I don't think I saw if they're using notation or cosign, and are they thinking about if they're rotated, are they okay with currently manually updating Ratify with the latest certificate, or do they expect rotation to automatically happen? But a good case study for us, for sure.
Okay.
So the next one, Akash, yeah, thank you for bringing it up. So the error messages, it's good to get feedback from Kara's team. I think the main thing I understood is maybe the wrapping of different levels of original error could be too verbose, but I definitely think when we added the wrapping, we wanted ability to add our own error codes, add maybe links to the ratified TSG. And how do we balance that? We can keep thinking about it.
Yeah. For the error message, I think maybe we
Yeah.
needed to have a dedicated session to discuss this. And
Yeah.
so currently, there is some scenarios that the user would like to retrieve some useful information from the output so that they can do some remediation work. So with current error message, it is not well structured. So for example, if I would like to know based on the output, I would like to get the information of the image URL. It's not easy for me to do that. So maybe we can have some kind of property as image reference, so that I will know, or I can use a tool to retrieve that property that I know this is error for this image, right? And we also have this detailed or reason or error code. So with different information, I combine it together, I will know what happened. So currently it is not well structured, but we can later discuss what is the best format.
Yeah, I want to just quick check with Akash and Binbin and on the notation behavior, like what Kara mentioned here, like, okay, the identity is not trusted. How it'll be nice to see what what you trust and what my value is, but is that something notation needs to provide us? Like, is there much we can do here on the actual value of the verification?
The actual value is clearly it isn't in the trust list. This isn't.
Yeah, I feel the error is returned from the notation goal library.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, if customers want to get more detailed information, then from the Ratify side, we can provide more, but it depends on the dependency library, like for example, the notation goal, or even for ours and the cosine, because we have a lot of dependencies, and for Ratify, we can control everything on all the like errors from the library.
Yeah, so for this improvement, for example, the specific one, do we file a issue on the notation repository?
I want to understand the question here. So, what Carol reported is the only error that is meaningful is the original error. Actually, the original error is from Notary project, right?
Yes.
Then she mentioned the only thing that might be nice is what the actual value is. Clearly, it isn't in the. So I'm trying to understand her ask on this because he mentioned that this error, although it is in the original error format, but it is meaningful, right? Then the rest part of the sentence,
the identity of the certificate is not trusted. So, for example, if we trust apple and oranges, and a mango came, so the error message should say mango is not in the trusted list. Like, what is the actual value that failed the validation? I think that's what she means.
So she expect that she would like to see the list of trust identities, right? She would like to know.
I think she wants to know the not trusted one, the one that it's attached to the image that's being validated.
Okay.
So what failed? What was the item that was not in the trusted list?
Okay. Okay. So the trust identities, so in Ratify, follows the Notary project trust policy, right? So there is a trust identity property, and that property user need to configure who should I trust, and that information is the subject DN of the certificate. So it is in this arrow sentence, it is in the signed certificate. So from Notary project point of view, it fetch the subject DN of the signed certificate and compile with the trust policy that Ratify configured. It does not match. So populate this error message. But this information should be returned from Notary project.
Yeah, from Notary project. So so should we just file an issue with Notary project? Like, is that how we could just pass on the information?
Yeah, I think we can create one in Notary project.
Yeah.
For this case, and I know there is ongoing error message improvement in Notary project as well. But anyway, we can create this one.
Yeah, there's a few follow-up items from this overall description, but we'll has it been resolved already? Okay, yeah. It's been tracked as the overall error message improvement feedback. Okay. Cool. And there was another one about pass-through mode. Is there? Oh, this is general.
Yeah, it's just a confirm my understanding question.
Yeah, got it. But there's an action item to improve the refers not found.
Yes.
Generic message. Yeah.
That one, that one's very annoying. I think we have another tracking that.
This is good to point out, just to get Yi's suggestion. So customer configured verifiers, right? And there were nothing to validate on the image. In this case, what's your opinion on it should be a success or failure?
I think this depends on the policy because, for example, from user point of view, I want to verify an image, right? However, the image does not have any signature, then it should be a failure because I cannot verify the integrity of the image. And if the image has signature and I use the policy to verify if it is fail, it is still a failure. So anyway, from user point of view, I want to verify the integrity of the image. So if you do not, if the image did not have any signature, it should fail, right? Because I cannot verify it. So it's, I think it's depend on how the policy defines this. From Ratify point of view, we return that no referrals, maybe we can be more specific. For example, no signature or no, or some artifact type. Then the policy can decide this should be a failure based on the how user want to anchor the policy.
I see. From a referrers, so each refer, I think this no refers found is returned by the executor today. Sure. Okay.
Yep.
I'm not sure. Yeah. What's
mean,
the
one-
action item here to change?
One thing we can do is we can make this, like you said, we can actually list out all the verifiers that are configured. We'll be like, if you had, we can list every single verifier name and say we didn't find artifacts for this. So if you're called your verifier notary project, the notation will say, no, you didn't find any notary project signatures, or we can just output the list of artifact types. That might actually be the most specific, although I don't know if that's as useful of an error.
Okay. Just to provide more information from the executor's perspective instead of like just simple error no refers found.
One thing we'd have to look into is then the policy could then query that saying, oh, I see Ratify returned an error saying that no refers with this particular artifact type were not found, right? Then that the policy will make that decision and understand, oh, because it said that this artifact type wasn't found, this means that, oh, no signatures were found, right? I don't think on our end we can necessarily say, oh, this translates to no signatures found.
Yeah. Hence, we just like, we have configured these verifiers and none of these were found.
Yeah.
It depends on what's been configured. Yeah, cool. But yes, providing more information is a good start.
Yeah, so that the policy can know. Otherwise, we will meet a problem that if images are not assigned with any, for example, signatures, so the policy should fail, right? The evaluation should fail, not
Yeah,
a
currently
pass.
fails. Yes.
Okay.
Or just
So
you need to
currently
improve on the messaging.
Currently the fail, this decision is on the reg policy, right? Or on the verifier returns error.
Do you know? Yep.
There's no
Go ahead.
verifiers that are actually run at that point. So this is a ratify level error that's returned to the user saying that we didn't verify anything. Nothing happened.
So it's a result that we returned to, for example, gatekeeper. Then at the gatekeeper level, the reg policy will say it's a failure.
Yes,
So we just aggregate all the verified reports and return the verified reports to the gatekeeper. And the gatekeeper will have their own legal policy to evaluate the verified reports.
Yeah, I just try to understand the current behavior. The decision is made in gatekeeper reg policy, right? Or is just follow the ratify aggregated result. So if it is successful, it is return 1. If not, return 0. So is ratify return 1 to policy or 0?
Yeah, I'm also not very clear. So by default is config policy, right, Bin? And pass-through mode is not the default.
Right.
But in the config policy, we've specified that we must have validated something. Therefore, in this scenario, I believe we ratify the executor will return a failure. It'll say success is false with an error referrals not found. Akash is
I
running
think this
through.
is actually, I'm trying to remember the code now. I think this is actually even before the config policy gets applied because it does a list refers call first, right?
Yeah.
And if it returns 0, it just, I think,
Oh.
automatically exits, right, Bin?
Oh, I just recall that. So for the referrals not found, I remember it's something processed in Ratify. So this is not. So we always return failure in this case. But I think we have a discussion on that before. So we think this is actual a kind of like policy evaluation. So for the config policy, even we set the pass-through mode. So this evaluation already happened in Ratify.
Yeah.
So in that case, gatekeeper can control the behavior.
So the current it is controlled in Ratify, right?
Yes. And but for regals, then we can pass the control to the gatekeeper if they want.
When we evaluate it, we send a response back to gatekeeper regardless, right? But we don't send it as a system error, I think. We wrap it up as a failure in like as an actual failure report, right, Bin? I think it'll say the top level is success is false, and it'll just show the payload will have the no refers found, I think.
Do you mean for the config policy?
For the config policy, right? Is this a system error that gets returned as a system error to gatekeeper, or is it an actual report with the high level is success set to false? Because those are two different behaviors, I think. System error will get caught as like a system error on the regular
I remember it will return success as false because it already passed it will go through the policy evaluation logic.
I see. Okay, so then that means from gatekeeper's point of view, when we apply the current sample template, which just looks to see if the overall success is true or false, it's just going to see that, oh, treat it as any other call. Okay, it was a false thing, so block the deployment or audit as a failure. So there's no system error in the response. It's actually, we return a properly formatted report with the top level is success being false.
But do we return no refers found somewhere?
That's a good question.
So I think the action item here is to understand what the current behavior is and decide if it's just an error improvement or it doesn't need to be like a behavior change.
Yeah, from verification point of view, if I configure this verifier, then I want to verify something, right? However, if there are no refers for the image, that means I cannot verify. So at least currently, I think from overall behavior point of view, it is okay. It's a failure, not a pass.
I see you're making the distinction between if there are verifiers configured, then it is assumed that, okay, if there's no refers, it makes sense to fail. But let's say someone didn't even set up any verifiers and then the refers don't exist, is that might not actually be considered a failure because they didn't actually set anything up to verify? Is that what you're getting at?
And this is also I try to understand because we have a default verifier, right, for notation and cosine. So we have this in the default verifier, and if user did not configure it, that means they do not to verify this, right? Then it should be a success. I mean,
Okay.
I have an image. I did not sign it. I do not want to verify the signature. It should pass, right?
Yeah, so this is back to the discussion like fail open, fail close, where we and it's ideally the customer would configure the default behavior when there's nothing to validate. So fail close being if there's nothing to validate should fail. So this behavior should be configurable for different. Ideally, it's configured in some policy.
I just checked the config policy code. So basically, if there is an error, so we will return a success and false, and we also append an error report, and it will contain the error message that the referral was not found.
Yep, I think this behavior is expected. I think that's what you said, right?
Yeah. It's just we should be clear about the no refers. Should be clear about the type, because over time we will have a different type, right? So it is too general and does not help user to understand which refers.
And actually, for Xinghe also mentioned this before, and he said actually he's not familiar with like artifacts or something. So when he first saw this error message, the referral is not found, he didn't know what happened. So what is the referral?
Yeah. I agree. The action item here probably is just to improve on the logging on the error message. Like nothing to validate is better than, or like no validation was performed is better than like referrals not found.
Yeah, or maybe if it is for a notation verifier, we can just say the notary project signature is not found. Or
Well,
cosine
that's the
signature
thing.
is not found.
If there was nothing found, the executor would try to see what's attached to this image to try to validate. But if there's nothing found, the notation verifier isn't invoked.
So in this case, okay, it's a general error, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So actually, it means there's nothing associated with this image. But how about a case that user configured a spawn file for the image, and the user do not have a signature for the image? Then, for example, the notation as a verifier, it should fail, right? Because it cannot find the signature. So how will this report to the user?
Yeah, we have some nested configuration. So in a policy, we could specify like make sure we see a SBOM artifact type and also the nested signature on the SBOM artifact type. So this level of configuration is possible today. Yeah, which is why currently when there's nothing to validate, it is an overall failure because it's configured in the default config policy. We expect a like any plus the notation signatures.
I think today we are over time, and later maybe we can do some testing from user point of view. Yeah, we can prepare some test cases, and from user point of view, we do some tests to see whether anything else we need to improve.
Yeah, yeah. I think we agree on the error message would be improved in this
Yeah.
case. And it's being tracked by the issue 1321 already, so we'll
Yeah.
address that.
Yeah.
All right.
And we
I guess
also should, sorry. One more thing, we should also consider if user using some script or something, they can easily to get the value from the messages. I mean, if I want to retrieve what image is failed, I can easily retrieve it from the messaging. So maybe we can consider we have this structure, right? But maybe we do not have that property, for example, image reference, something like that. Consider a script, a machine to consume this error message.
I see. We'll evaluate the output, but yes, I think in the feedback somewhere it says it's not clear to extract. I'm not sure. Sorry. Is there a log that somewhere that this is the image that failed the validation already? Is that a part of the structure of the verify report?
So the problem that we have is that there's two different concerns here. If you're using Ratify in the CLI level, then yes, your verify report gets outputted, and then we can do some extra enrichment to make it more machine readable. If you're using in the gatekeeper sense, gatekeeper is actually the one. So the constraint template is the actual one that bubbles up the message sent to the user. That's where it'll say subject failed verification, and then it'll give you the subject reference name. So if we need to make any updates to being more verbose there, we have to make it in the constraint template. Because right now the constraint template doesn't actually send back, we're not printing out the verifier report in that message, that violation message in the constraint template.
Okay, then we need to maybe work with Xinghe about this. At least for now, from the error policy point of view, the reasons for the failure image are not showing very clearly in the message. We
That
can
was one
discuss that.
feedback I had given him too, that we need to get that report has all of the important information for remediation. Either we need to sanitize and do something on that end to make it clear.
Okay.
So.
Okay, I got your point. From the
Yeah.
Ratify point of view, all the metadata are in the report. So from the user, I mean, for example, Xinghe point of view, they need to extract those information, right?
Yes, because our response is the only part we control. So
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the discussion, everyone. I have to drop for another meeting.
Yeah.
But we
Thank you.
We can continue on the thread for the issue. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.